Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So today I'm going to show you how I made a gatefold card using this gorgeous forest glade die from Funky Fossil Designs. I'm going to make a spring themed card and I'm going to use this Spring in the Forest stamp set designed by Clair for Funky Fossil Designs. It was part of a release last year. So first of all, you're going to need your scoreboard and you're going to need a piece of cardstock that measures 12 inches by 5 inches. And we're going to score at 4 inches and 8 inches. I'm going to score on both sides just so that I get a good crisp score line and no cracking of the cardstock. This weighs about 250 GSM, so it's not heavy cardstock. So next I'm going to bring in my Big Shot machine and my chrome base plate and I'm going to line the die up on one of those panels. Once I'm happy that it's central, I'm just going to run that through the die cutting machine and then I'm just going to remove all those excess bits of cardstock. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find that quite therapeutic. So I've got my Pokey tool just to get a few of the smaller bits out. And there we've got the first panel done. So I'm just going to score that over now on the score line that we've already made. And once I'm happy that that's level, I'm going to just use my bone fold just to smooth that over so that we get a nice crisp score line. So next we're going to fold over the other panel and I'm just going to score that as well. We're going to die cut the forest glade die on that section as well. So first of all, as you can see, the card won't quite fold and this is where I just take a little bit off the edge. So really the panel measures 11 7/8. You're really just taking a little smidgen off that side just so that it folds nice and neatly. And as you can see, it really is just a small bit. So in order to line up the second panel so that the die cut panel will show through, I'm just going to mark with my pencil some of the edges around where the die is already cut on the front panel. This is just so that it'll help me line up the die so that I can cut through the back panel. So you kind of get a tunnel card effect with the gatefold. So once I'm happy that I've made enough marks to really help me know where I'm going to line it up, I can then open the panel up and you're going to line it up with the pencil marks. You need to remember to open the whole card up. You only want to die cut that one panel. So if you leave it closed, you could end up die cutting through the whole card, which is not what we want. So once I'm happy that that's lined up, remember those pencil marks are going to be removed on the excess bits of cardstock from the die cut. So you're not going to be able to see any of those marks once we run it through. And then I'm just going to, again, remove all those excess bits of cardstock, use my Pokey tool. I'll link as many products as I can in the description box below. I am using a Sizzix tool there. And then we can just fold it over, check that we're happy with it. And that is how I created the gatefold card. So today I'm going to create a spring card. I'm using this gorgeous stamp set. It really lends itself well to being watercoloured, but equally to coloured pencils, or even just leaving it black and white or whatever colour you choose to stamp in. So I've brought in my cutting mat because I just find it gives a little bit of a nicer, I guess I'm using it like a stamping mat basically. And I've got Acorn Versafine Clair ink. That gives a lovely crisp impression. And I think sometimes it's nice to stamp in brown instead of black. And I'm just going to use different elements from the stamp set to really build up a scene. What's really lovely about this stamp set is there's so many small elements. So you've got lots of different wildflowers. You've got a couple of rabbits, a bird, some butterflies, a lovely bird's nest. So you've got all the elements that you need to really build as many scenes as you possibly could imagine. And it really lends itself to being watercoloured. So that's what I'm doing today. I've got my Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolour pan set. I've got 2 paintbrushes. They're both Princeton rounds. One is a size 4 and one is a size 8. However, you'll notice that I actually only use the size 4. I am not a watercolour expert. This is really amateur watercolouring and I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of trying to just get colour down on the page. And I think the best thing to do with watercolours is just to get them out and play with them and experiment. I'm sure there's lots of videos out there explaining how to really properly watercolour, but I just like playing and just really getting the colour down on the page. And if you've not got too much water on your brush, it allows you to get into the finer detail of the stamps without making a mess. And I do let the layers dry in between. So once I'd done the grass layer and the sky, I did let that dry before I came in and did the detail of the stamps. Otherwise you could risk the colours merging together. I'm using a mixture of techniques. Sometimes I'm using a wet brush on dry, and then other times, like on the rabbits, I did wet them first and then I came in with the colour. And you get different effects. And I think the best thing is just play around, get the colours out and have a play. But these stamps are just gorgeous. They really do lend themselves to being watercoloured, but equally coloured pencils. I just don't always have the patience to colour with pencils. So next I'm taking my Cutter B scissors and I'm just going to fussy cut around these smaller images. I'm going to use these images to try and build up my scene, and they're really easy to fussy cut around because there's not too many smaller details, and if you're really careful and you move the cardstock rather than the scissors, you can really get into all those smaller spaces and cut out really neat images. I do find these Cutter B scissors are great for fussy cutting. I have tried other scissors. I've tried longer bladed scissors. I've tried a different brand, but I always just find that my Cutter B scissors are reliable and I find them really easy to use. If you are struggling with fussy cutting, I would recommend perhaps trying a lighter weight of cardstock. I think that makes it easier. And I've just added a little bit of detail there using some Arteza coloured pencils just on the smaller elements of the stamps, so like the bird's beak and the flower that the bunny's holding. So next I'm going to map my scene layer on some purple cardstock. The inner panel measures 5 by 4, so I've cut my colour cardstock to 4 7/8 by 4 7/8 by 3 7/8, and then my inner scene panel is 3 3/4 by 4 3/4. And as you can see, I'm just going to close the card. I want the bunny to be on display when the card's closed. So I've just lined that up with the openings in the die cuts. And I'm just using some Nuvo Deluxe glue to adhere that down. And once I'm happy with my scene, and I've added all those little elements in, I do then decide that I'm going to add a sentiment to the front. And there's lots of lovely sentiments on the stamp set. So today I'm going to choose A Kind Word is Like a Spring Day. I've got this banner die from Sizzix in the same purple cardstock, and I'm using Wow Superfine white embossing powder, and I'm just going to heat that with my heat tool. I'm using a Sizzix heat tool today, and then once that's heat set, I'm just going to snip off the end and then adhere that to the front of the card. And I'm going to use the same Nuvo Deluxe glue because it's to hand on my desk and it's really quick drying. So that's the finished gatefold card. So as you can see, you've got this really lovely little scene. It closes really nicely, so it lines up. And there's lots of lovely detail on there. And I do just decide that I'm going to dress up the back of the card where you'd write your message. So again, I'm using a panel of purple cardstock and white cardstock, and I'm just going to matte and layer those together. And then once I'm happy with those, I decide that I'm going to add a small stamp in the bottom right-hand corner of that white panel. And I think it just really finishes off the card nicely. So I'm just going to use a couple of these spring flowers, the same Acorn Versafine Clair ink, and there we go. There's the finished card. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. I really hope that you like this technique. I'll link as many products as I can in the description box below. And if you've liked and enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and leave a comment. And if you've enjoyed this and would like to see more videos from me, then please do subscribe. So thank you so much for joining me today and for watching. Take care.